closely at this figure. He sits at a desk that could belong to any century of the modern era. He holds a cup of coffee, perhaps the ultimate symbol of corporate alertness, the chemical defiance against the natural human rhythm of exhaustion. He wears a tie, the uniform of the professional. But he has no face. He is a void, a shadow. He is what philosophers might call a walking aporia, a living puzzle, an unresolvable contradiction. He looks human, he performs the tasks of a human, but the space where his humanity should reside has been entirely hollowed out. If you have ever sat in a modern office or stared at a corporate dashboard tracing your key performance indicators, or received an automated email from human resources demanding that you bring your full, passionate self to work, you have likely felt the cold draft of this void. We live in an era that prides itself on corporate culture, employee wellness, and psychological safety. Organizations hire chief happiness officers. They buy subscriptions to meditation apps for their employees. They demand emotional intelligence, empathy, and raw enthusiasm. But today, we are going to explore a deeply uncomfortable truth. These institutions do not actually care about your humanity. In fact, they spent the last 300 years systematically destroying it. What if the modern organization is trapped in a profound psychological paradox? What if it has successfully stripped human beings of their organic, unpredictable, messy souls, reducing them to mere gears in a corporate machine, only to realize that gears cannot show passion? Today, we are launching a critique of the contemporary workplace using a concept you usually only hear about in biology or mythology: anthropomorphization. We will examine how society turned us into objects, and why it is now forced to treat us like stuffed animals, forcing a performance of life out of a ghost of its own making. To understand how we became ghosts, we first have to look at what we were before the modern world began. Prior to the 18th century, Western civilization lived in what historians call traditional society. It was a world governed not by efficiency, but by theology, cosmic hierarchy, and cyclical time. People viewed the universe through the lens of the Scala Natura, the great chain of being. God was at the top, followed by angels, kings, nobles, and peasants, all the way down to animals and plants. It was a rigid, unequal, and often oppressive environment. If you were born a peasant, you died a peasant. But it had a distinct characteristic. It was organic. Labor was tied to the seasons and the harvest. A craftsman, a blacksmith, or a weaver belonged to a guild. They built a whole product from start to finish. Their work was an extension of their personal identity and community survival. Crucially, even the lowest peasant was viewed as an irreplaceable soul, trapped inside a grand cosmic drama. Then came the modernist project. Starting in the 17th and 18th centuries, a massive intellectual revolution swept the Occident. The Enlightenment thinkers sought to dethrone religious dogma and replace it with universal reason, empirical science, and the belief in inevitable linear progress. René Descartes argued that truth was found in the cold, analytical lens of the mind, famously separating the thinking mind from the physical body, which he viewed as a mere machine. Nature was no longer a sacred creation. It was a giant clockwork mechanism to be optimized. And it didn't take long before the architects of this new world realized they could apply this exact same engineering mindset to human beings. In 1776, Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, introducing the world to the division of labor. He showed that if you break down a complex human craft, like making a pen, into tiny, mindless, repetitive steps, efficiency skyrockets. One person pulls the wire, another cuts it, another sharpens the point. By the early 20th century, this reached its zenith. With Frederick Taylor's scientific management, Taylor literally stood over factory workers with a stopwatch, measuring their micro-movements to eliminate wasted human motion. The Modernist project achieved its ultimate goal. It successfully decoupled workers from their humanity under the guise of progress and rationality. The organization didn't want your thoughts, your emotions, or your bad days, or even your creativity. It wanted a predictable, calculable, highly standardized unit of labor. The human being was systematically objectified, hollowed out, and bolted into a machine. As the bureaucratic machine grew, it found its ultimate philosophical justification in a 1920s intellectual movement known as Logical Positivism. Emerging from a group of thinkers called the Vienna Circle, Logical Positivism introduced a brutal intellectual guillotine, the verification principle. They argued that a statement is only meaningful if it can be proven mathematically or verified empirically in a laboratory. Anything else, theology, metaphysics, ethics, aesthetics, and deep emotional meaning, was dismissed as cognitively meaningless noise. If you couldn't measure it, it didn't exist. Logical positivism is the silent operating system of the contemporary corporate office. Look at how a modern organization operates. It is obsessed exclusively with what can be quantified. To a spreadsheet driven by modern rationalization, concepts like existential fulfillment, artistic pride, or human exhaustion are unverifiable noise. They cannot be turned into data. Therefore, the organization builds a reality entirely out of metrics: sales targets, response times, hours logged, keystrokes monitored by software. By treating the organization as a purely logical positivist machine, the corporate structure strips away the qualitative depth of human experience. The employee is formally, legally, and operationally an object, an inanimate resource. And this brings us to the core of our critique. A machine has a fundamental flaw. It has no intrinsic motivation. An engine doesn't care if the company hits the quarterly goals. A spreadsheet doesn't feel passion. Realizing they have built a cold, dead machine out of human parts, modern organizations hit a wall. They needed human performance, but they have already destroyed the human ecosystem that produces it. So what do? They engage in anthropomorphization. Remember the difference between personification and anthropomorphization. Personification is just a figure of speech, like saying, the wind is angry. But anthropomorphization involves taking a non-human object and demanding that it literally behave like a human. Because the modernist project successfully turned the worker into an inanimate object, any modern corporate initiative that demands human emotion is no longer a recognition of your inherent humanity. It is the organization projecting human traits onto a machine of its own making. When an organization demands radical candor, corporate passion, unwavering loyalty, or emotional resilience, it is performing a form of psychological taxidermy. It kills the organic humanity of the individual through systematic bureaucracy, stuffs the empty shell with corporate values, and then marvels at how human-like the entity behaves during the Monday morning meeting. This is why corporate culture feels so deeply uncanny, so profoundly unheimlich, a German word meaning uncanny or eerie. We are witnessing an object being forced to act alive. Think about the absurdity of a company trying to measure passion via a quantitative, logical positivist survey. On a scale of 1 to 5, for example, how aligned are you with our corporate mission? They have taken the boundless, unmeasurable human emotion, smashed it with their analytical tools, and now demand that you synthetically recreate it to satisfy an algorithm. You are no longer a human being expressing joy. You are an object performing an act of anthropomorphization to keep the machine running. This brings us back to our character, the faceless office worker sitting in the structural darkness. He is the perfect representation of the contemporary employee. The modernist project has hollowed him out, leaving him as a dark gray silhouette, barely distinguishable from the pitch-black void of the bureaucracy around him. He is a shadow of what a human being is meant to be. Yet look at what he is doing. He is wearing the tie. He is sitting at the desk. He is holding the cup of coffee. He is executing the script perfectly. The organization looks at him and says, "Look, he's drinking coffee. He's participating in our culture. He must be alive." Those charged with running the organization are blind to the fact that they are just admiring a ghost. Early 20th century German sociologist Max Weber warned us about the iron cage, a world so rationalized, so optimized, that the human spirit would eventually suffocate inside it. The first step to breaking out of that cage is recognizing that the humanity your workplace demands from you is often just a synthetic product. When you feel alienated by corporate positivity, it isn't because you're failing. It's because your real, organic, human soul is rejecting the taxidermy. The next time you're asked to bring your passion to a spreadsheet, remember the silhouette. Protect the messy, unpredictable, unquantifiable parts of who you are. Keep them far away from the dashboard. Your humanity doesn't belong to the organization. It belongs to you.